This is supersonic Wi-Fi from Xfinity. It's fast.
So gaming with your niece has never felt more intense. Hey, what does this button do?
Unbeatable internet, only from Xfinity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inquirer Live at Game Day Central, sponsored by Xfinity. I'm Scott Lauber, baseball reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and today we'll be discussing the first half of the Phillies season and looking ahead to what we might be able to expect when play resumes Friday night after the All-Star break. So it's been an eventful first half, to say the least. There was the firing of manager Joe Girardi at the beginning of June, a broken thumb that took Bryce Harper off the field a few weeks later, and more twists and turns than your average corn maze. But as we sit here today, the Phillies are percentage points ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals for the final playoff spot in the National League. And the next few weeks, punctuated by the trade deadline on August 2nd, will help determine if they can hold on and make the playoffs for the first time since 2011. No National League team has a longer active postseason drought. So, yeah, I guess you could say the Phillies are due. Let me welcome in my colleague at the Inquirer, baseball writer Alex Coffey. Alex, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Scott?
Good. How's your All-Star break?
It's been good. It's been low-key. I've been doing a lot of laundry, cleaning, grocery shopping, sleeping, spending time with my cat. All
I hear it.
Things to do.
Yeah, catching up on your life, right? So if I look a little orange, I think I look a little orange. It's not because I've been down the shore and laying on a beach. It's because the whole Monday, we haven't talked about the All-Star game. I was in LA, and the whole Monday, all the activities were outside, like all the interviewing and all the media availability, which they didn't at least broadcast that fact that it was going to be outside. So I'm standing there, and I have no hat, and I have no suntan lotion, and I'm just getting scorched. So I look orange now. I looked pink on Monday night and Tuesday, very, very strange color. So that's the reason for my bizarre complexion. But anyway, let's get right into it. So let's take a look back, I guess, at the last 2.5, 3 months, and this I think really kind of strange and unusual first half. I think if we were having this conversation on June 1st instead of July 21st, we would be talking about a team that was 7 games under 500 and really not looking like it was in the playoff picture at all. What sticks out to you about the first half of the season and everything we've seen so far?
I think the biggest thing has to be the pitching, because it's the pitching that's gotten them to this point, which I don't think any of us had that on our bingo cards heading into the season after they signed Castellanos and Schwarber. I think a lot of fans and a lot of media assumed that it would be the Phillies offense that would push them into playoff contention. But it's really been their starting pitching, and it's been the bullpen. The emergence of the bullpen is pretty solid, pretty unflappable recently. Again, don't think any of us predicted that. So those are the two big ones for me, I think, is just, maybe the offense not necessarily living up to all of the hype, and the bullpen and the starting pitching really carrying this team the first half.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think they have the 4th best ERA in the National League, and yet here we are, and we'll get into this. Here we are less than 2 weeks from the trade deadline, and I my feeling at least is that they need more pitching. So we'll get into that as well. But yeah, you're right. And one of the things that stuck out to me being at the All-Star game was that Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola were not there, and it was difficult to look at the list of National League pitchers and say, well, so and so did not belong, or I would have put either of them on the team over this guy or that guy. But I thought it was pretty glaring because, and we'll get into this too, but like if you ask me who the Phillies MVP is through the first half, I might say Wheeler or Nola or both.
Yeah, definitely. Those guys have been huge, especially Nola. I was less surprised by Wheeler's performance this season than Nola's, just considering the fact that he's coming off of a down season in 2021, and he's kind of shown us glimpses of what he was in 2018. And I wasn't really expecting that this year. So definitely the emergence of those two has been key for them.
Yeah. I want to look forward more than we look back, but I don't think we can look forward yet until we talk about the managerial change back in June. And again, being out in LA and talking to a lot of people, friends of ours who are writers and people who are around the game in different capacities who are not in Philadelphia. I think one of the questions a lot of people asked was like, what's happened since they fired Joe Girardi? Like, did they have to fire Girardi to make this happen? How much of this is on Rob Thompson and what he's been able to do? What's your feeling kind of on, because certainly that looks like the pivot point, right? I mean, they were 22 and 29. They're, I think, 27 and 14 under Rob Thompson. It certainly is the pivot point in the season so far. So what's your take on, I guess, how important it was to make that change when they did and how much of an effect it's had on everything that's happened since?
Well, I think that they timed it perfectly because they made this change right as the schedule was about to soften up. So Thompson was heading into a few series against teams that were below 500. The first few months, the Phillies were playing really tough teams. So I think that has to be factored in. But beyond that, I really sense an energy shift between Thompson and Girardi. I think Girardi was emitting a lot of his stress, and to be fair to him, it is stressful being on the hot seat and knowing that you have to make the postseason to keep your job for another year. But it didn't seem like he was good at concealing that stress, that he was kind of like letting that out. Whereas Thompson seems a little bit more even keeled, which I think resonates with the players. And then beyond that, Thompson has really made it a priority to play a lot of the younger guys. And obviously that means a lot to the Stotts and to the, Veerlings of the team. But I also think that it means a lot to the veterans like Schwarber and Castellanos and Harper, who have vocalized the importance of giving those guys playing time. So I think that those are the two biggest differences that I can sense in terms of Thompson and Girardi. But yeah, those are the things that stick out to me.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. Joe Girardi is wound a little tight, let's just say, and and that's always been the case. Not just this year when he was essentially going into the season as a lame duck. They did not pick up the option. They were going to wait until the end of the year to do that. But I think just generally speaking, he can be wound a little tight, and I do think that kind of has an effect on the people around him. And when you spend as much time around other people as you do when you're on a baseball team and, with those 26 players in the clubhouse, it can definitely kind of wear on you day in and day out. And, you did hear from a lot of the veteran players like Kyle Schwarber when the season was early in the season and things weren't going so well that like it's a long season and, we have a long way to go. And I know that makes fans kind of roll their eyes back in there because everyone wants to place so much importance on what's happening right now. But, I do think it's important in the context of a baseball season to realize that it is a long year. I know you can't, you can lose a season early in the year, but you can't win anything early in the year. And, Girardi, was, he went through like 6 leadoff guys, right, in the first 3 weeks of the year or something like that. And it was kind of like, I do think that there were people looking around going, what's going on here? So, yes, I do think Rob Thompson has kind of brought a bit of a different, maybe more laid back attitude to the whole thing. And of course he can, right? He's here on an interim basis and he's got nothing to lose per se. But yeah, I do. I think that it had something to do with it. I do think, though, that there are so many other factors, like Kyle Schwarber being a force at the top of the order, like the pitch that we've talked about them getting, like the bullpen turning things around. Girardi got fired in the middle, like right after that really, really bad road trip that they had to Atlanta and New York. They came home. They had the day off on Memorial Day. They won on that Tuesday, they lost on Tuesday, won on Wednesday, had a day off Thursday, right? And then and then he got fired. So, it was kind of like coming out of that Atlanta, New York trip where the bullpen really, really kind of, there was the game in Atlanta, the Nick Nelson game. And really, I think the bullpen sort of turning things around, stabilizing things has made things so much better. Let's talk about one other thing before we look ahead, and that's the loss of Bryce Harper. They're 12-8, I think, since he took that fastball off his thumb. And I don't know about you, but I did not think that they'd go 12. And I didn't think they'd play this well without him. I don't know if they can sustain it or not. He is going to come back this year. At least he's planning to. What's your impression of like sort of what they've done or been able to do without him? I think most of us thought boy, if only they could tread water, and they've done way more than that.
Yeah, I think it helps when Kyle Schwarber is turning into the second coming of Babe Ruth in the month of June. So that obviously is helpful. But beyond that, I think, it feels like there have been more often than not, it's like the younger guys, the guys at the bottom of the lineup that are contributing when they need some pop, like Vierling and Munoz and Stott. They're not always contributing, but I feel like those guys have shown up more than maybe I expected them to this season. So I think that certainly has helped, but whether or not they can sustain it is a big question entering the second half. I think that you're going to have to see more consistent production from Real Muto and Castellanos specifically, because it can't always fall down to Schwarber or the young guys. So
Yes, no, I absolutely agree with you. And again, I think it's their pitching that's kind of carried them through these last few weeks, and they'll look to have to, they'll have to maybe win games that way as things continue. I mean, I think of that series in St. Louis, and it was like 1-0 and 2-0, and it was the pitching that we were talking about. So really quick here, let's do a quick couple of rapid fire questions. Who's your Phillies MVP for the first half?
I would have to go with Schwarber. Obviously, the 29 home runs is nice, very helpful for the team. But beyond that, I think that I think that he's kind of seized the leadership role in this clubhouse and has kind of sparked a little bit of a cultural change. So I think that he kind of brings a combination of tangibles and intangibles with him. He highlights a lot of the younger guys, like unsung hero types, and it seems like he's really good at making everyone feel appreciated in the clubhouse and kind of creating this cohesive culture there. So he would be my MVP, both for the home runs and for that.
Yeah, no, there's no underestimating his value as a leader, and I had a chance to spend a lot of time with him in LA this week, and around the All-Stars, and he had a lot of former teammates there, and they all speak very highly of that element of his personality. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to go with the entire starting rotation. And I'll put an asterisk on that, because like the fact that Zach Eflin is out right now. We're going to be talking about that in a second. It's going to be difficult, I think, to withstand the loss of any one of those 5 starters for any length of time. But I think the rotation's been terrific. I think that they've logged a lot of innings. I think that that's helped the bullpen out in a lot of ways. The fact that the starters have gone deep in games. And I think that, like we've said, like over these last few weeks, without Bryce Harper, the pitching's carried them through. What about your least valuable player through the first half?
I am going to go with Juris Familia. And I think that part of the reason why I'm going for him is just looked at through how much they're paying him and what they're getting. They signed him to a $6 million 1-year deal, if I'm remembering correctly. And he's pretty much the only guy in their bullpen right now that they cannot trust. Like it's a guaranteed adventure every time he goes out there. Even if he escapes a jam, it's like he's going to put runners on base. So I think he's the one that's probably the least valuable to me, given, and that's kind of relative to how the rest of the bullpen is performing. I mean, most of those guys are somewhat trustworthy at this point. So
yeah, absolutely. He's a good pick. I'm going to choose Nick Castellanos again, with the disclaimer that we're 60% of the way through. So there's a long way to go to get himself off of this hook. But, they did expect a whole lot more. I was looking the other day, and there's I'm going to get this not exactly correct because I don't have it in front of me, but there's 157 players who are qualified for the batting title in either league, and he's 155th in WAR or something like that. So not what you want when you sign a guy to a $100 million contract. No. But again, I think that, there's a lot of time for him to turn it around. He's got a track record, and you hear Rob Thompson say he's getting a lot of hits. Most of them are singles. And he's I just keep thinking he's going to go off at some point. So that's my pick. Let's remind everyone to send in some questions. We've got a lot of good ones here so far, and we're going to get to them here in just a minute. You can send your questions in and your comments. Please go to inquirer.com/live to do that. Let's look ahead now, and let's focus on the trade deadline. It comes up August 2nd. That's less than 2 weeks from now. And, put yourself in the room, right? Like you're Dave Dombrowski, and you've got to make some decisions here. You're probably not going to be able to fill every single need you have on the roster. Maybe you'll just fill one. Maybe you'll fill a couple. What's your priority?
I think it has to be pitching, whether it's starting pitching or bullpen help. I think that Sir Anthony Dominguez has looked pretty shaky his past few outings. It's only 2 outings really that he's looked shaky. So, take it with a grain of salt. That's a small sample size. But as someone that was like their lockdown back of the bullpen guy, and is coming off of basically 2 seasons that he missed because he was rehabbing Tommy John surgery. I think you kind of want to be careful with him. So I'll probably go with bullpen help. Even despite the fact that the bullpen has far surpassed expectations. So
yeah. No, I'm gonna go pitching too, but I'm gonna go rotation first. You were in Miami, so you can probably help fill us in a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the news that Zach Eflin threw that simulated game and then didn't feel so great on Sunday really kind of set off some alarms with me. It reminds me of last year when he had a knee problem that ultimately required surgery, and they went out and they got Kyle Gibson at the deadline. I look though at this, and we'll talk about this. I look though at this trade market, and there's not a whole lot of great pitching options available. You're going to have to give up a lot to get Luis Castillo from the Reds. Yeah. Frankie Montas, I think, pitches today, and so maybe if he comes back and he's healthy, he's an option for some teams. But he's been out a while. Noah Syndergaard, does he interest you as a rental pitcher? There's just not a whole lot out there, but I do think that they're going to have to explore that, because if Eflin's going to miss some time, you're going to need somebody. So, and I do think the bullpen is also right there. I take your point about Sir Anthony Dominguez. He's coming off of Tommy John surgery, and they're very cautious of how much they use him and how often they use him. And so I think another late inning arm will help. I look at like that OPS in center field, and I kind of think like, well, they could use some help there. We all think that, but I also see like Gene Segura is coming back. Yeah. Bryce Harper says he's going to come back. So, you think you're going to get some offense from the guys you're going to bring back. And so maybe it's the pitching where they need to really kind of, and this dovetails into the conversation of like, what are you going to give up? Because in order to get something, you've got to give something. They don't have a farm system with a ton of prospects at the AAA and AA levels. Most of their better prospects are in single A.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line? Like, it certainly seems like Mick Abel and Andrew Painter are untouchable or close to it. But how about Logan O'Hoppe? How about Johan Rojas? Like, where do you draw the line on what you're going to give up to get something you need?
I think I draw the line at O'Hoppe, and this might be because I covered the A's for 2 years. I feel like I'm constantly looking at things through the prism of the long game and not rushing guys and like, kind of stretching out their development. And you can never have too much catching prospects, super valuable. Given Real Muto's, health history and stuff, it's obviously a really demanding position. He could, I feel like if they kept him, he could see some playing time at the big league level if they shifted Real Muto to first base or maybe even a different position. I don't know, just to get him, not like behind the plate 24, like 162 games a year. So I probably would not trade O'Hoppe just because of the long-term value that he brings to the team. And also I think, it's generally good not to rush prospects if you don't have to, despite the year that he's having. He's obviously been great this season, but I don't really think that means that they should necessarily move him now or, move him up too quickly.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that you want to keep Logan O'Hoppe, because I'm going to trade him, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very reluctantly for a couple of reasons. Number one, I really like Logan O'Hoppe. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last couple of years. I talked to him just the other day. He's a really, really nice kid. I think he's a really good player. I think he's going to make a nice catcher for somebody. But I also know Dave Dombrowski. I've covered him a little bit, and with the Red Sox and now here. And I wouldn't say that like he's predictable or that like there's a pattern, but I have seen him do something that sort of sticks out, which is, he'll look at a farm system and he'll trade from what he considers to be surplus value. Like if he's got two really good shortstops, he'll trade one of them. Or if he's got, a guy in the big leagues who's cemented in a position and a prospect coming behind him, maybe he'll move that prospect. And I sort of see that with the Phillies and their catching situation. JT Realmuto's here, and he's going to be here for a while. And, you could move him to another position. Yes, DH is open now, ordinarily, when Bryce Harper's, got a working elbow and all of those things. But, Ohapi is also a catcher. He's also not going to switch positions. And they have Rafael Marchand, who's a little bit, I think, lower on the prospect chart, but a guy who could certainly come here and be a backup catcher to Realmuto, maybe pick up some time as Realmuto gets a little older and he can't play 130 games a season anymore. So I do look at Ohapi and I think, like, well, if you're Dombrowski and you're thinking, like, which of these prospects should I move? Because I'm going to have to move one of them probably to get a valuable piece here. Maybe it's the guy who's blocked. And I'm just sort of guessing here that that's what he's going to look at and think. But I suspect maybe that's in his mind, more so than, let's say, like a Johan Rojas who plays center field, and you can dream on the idea that maybe he's your future center fielder a year or a year and a half from now. Ohapi is got that big roadblock in front of him, and that's JT Realmuto. So that's kind of how I look at it, and we'll sort of see how it goes. Once again, a reminder to people: please submit questions or comments in the comment section below. If you're watching us on social media, it's inquirer.com/live. And let's get right to it. Let me dive right in because we've got a whole bunch. Kerry Mulvey asks, can we get to I'm not used to calling the Phillies we, but he says, can we get to the playoffs without a closer? What do you think?
I mean, I think that their current setup is working out fine. Maybe I'm not as much of a baseball purist as everyone else is, but as long as it's Brad Hand or Sir Anthony, I feel like, I personally, if I were the Phillies, I would trust either one of those guys based on their recent production. So as long as you, like I said, as long as you don't lean on Sir Anthony too much, because obviously you want to be careful with him. But yeah, I don't think it's super necessary to like have that role belong to one guy.
So I'll say this: maybe the most impressive thing to me about Rob Thompson in the month and a half is that he hasn't named a closer, and it's worked.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like an old-fashioned guy when it comes to everyone in the bullpen's got to have a role, and I was talking to him in St. Louis the other day, and I said, like, like maybe I'm coming around on this, but like the idea that you could tell a guy, like, okay, prepare for this pocket of a lineup, which is what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like he's telling Sir Anthony, like, okay, if it's the Cardinals, right, like you're going to get whatever inning it is, whether it's the 8th or 9th, you're going to get, Edman, Goldschmidt, Arenado.
Yeah.
Right? That's who I want you to get. Well, then that's what he's preparing for. And if you tell Brad Hand, like, you're going to get, 6 through 9 or whatever it is, like, he can look at those hitters and that's what he can prepare for. So it's not so much like they're sitting out there in the bullpen waiting for the phone to ring in a specific inning, but rather for a specific part of the lineup. And he said that's exactly the idea. So yeah, I think, Kerry, I do think that they can make the playoffs without designating a closer, because so far this whole idea of like you're going to face this pocket of the lineup is working for them, and Thompson has gotten them to kind of think in that mindset. So I think I'm definitely kind of coming around to that idea that you don't need to assign a closer.
I think it makes a lot of sense too when you think about it, like being able to prepare for specific guys, like rather than just preparing for an inning.
Yeah.
And the numbers back it up, since Girardi was fired, I believe on June 3rd was Thompson's first day. The bullpen has a 2.99 ERA. So
yeah,
you can't argue with that.
No, you can't. So Adam Devoren asks, would the Phillies trade Logan Ohapi? He also, so we've touched on that.
We disagree.
We do disagree. I want to give you a chance though to kind of come back to me with, like, if you want to, like, the notion that he's blocked. And so, like, is this a guy who they could look at and say, we might have to swallow hard and do this reluctantly, but
Yeah.
It's the price you pay.
The other, like, when I think about him being blocked, I also look at like the amount of value that they would get in return for him. And I tend to lean towards them getting more value if they wait until the end of the season to move him. So, do I think that they should trade him in general? No, but I feel like if I were presented with those three options, I would probably lean, like, if it were like he's blocked and they have to trade him, I would probably lean towards waiting.
What I will say to Adam and to you is I wouldn't trade him for like anybody. Like I wouldn't trade him for a 2-month rental. I wouldn't trade him for Andrew Benintendi.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade him for, 2 months of Noah Syndergaard. Like I'm trading him. If I'm trading him, I'm trading him for a controllable piece beyond this year. Even so, like, could he headline like a Luis Castillo deal? I'm not sure. I think there may be some prospects out there with other teams that they can get who they would value more. But, again, I think if I'm trading him for somebody who I can have beyond this year. If it's just for a rental piece, sorry, he's not on the table. I'm not doing that. No.
Not worth it.
Adam, I see Adam has another question here, so we'll hit that right away. Were you surprised that the Phillies drafted a high school outfielder and not a player who'd get to the big league sooner?
I wasn't surprised, just because we talked to Brian Barber, I believe it was a couple of days before the draft, and he was talking about how, and I mean, this was, you have to take him at his word with this, but he said that they care less about whether the guy's in high school or in college and more about their upside and their talent. And so I wasn't super shocked by that. But maybe, I don't know, were you shocked?
No, not at all. Brian Barber has shown a willingness to draft high school players, and not only just high school players, but high school pitchers, which, you ask around and most people think that's like the riskiest demographic because so much can go wrong and they're so young. So no, I wasn't surprised. And I think that, the idea that you draft a player who can get to the big leagues sooner, it's still going to take a while. I mean, it really is. Like I go back to Chris Sale as like the one that sticks out as a player who was drafted. And like the quick story about Chris Sale is that like the White Sox were in their draft meeting and there was a game going on at the time. And Kenny Williams said to his scouts, or whoever the scout was who was presenting Chris Sale, he said, do you really think this guy can help us? And there was somebody warming up in the bullpen during the game. And the scout said, let's put it this way. He's better than that guy. And he pointed out to the bullpen. And, Sale was a college guy and was advanced. And he got to the big leagues really quickly. And the White Sox drafted him in part for that reason. That doesn't happen very often. And it's the reason why the Chris Sale story is like such an interesting story, because it's really not the norm. So no, I think that they were gonna draft the best player on their board, or whoever they thought was the best player on their board, regardless of age and whether they thought that person could come in and help in the next year and a half. Let's go to Harry Kalish, who wants to know, what's the chances of interim being dropped from the manager's title in reference to Rob Thompson?
I'm not going to put a percentage on it, because that is a good way to hurt me down the road and have someone attack me on Twitter and tell me that I'm an idiot.
That never happens. Twitter, no, it's the nicest place on earth.
I don't know. I feel like the fact that he's been able to do what he's been able to do, such a crazy turnaround, I feel like they have to give him a good look. So I don't know. At this point, I think that there's a decent chance. I don't know if I would say like a really good chance, but I think that he has to be in the running. Yeah,
I would tell Harry that sort of the same idea applies to like the Joe Girardi discussion at the beginning of the year. Like people who were wondering, would he get an extension? Would they pick? Would they pick up the option? And the Phillies said, or Dombrowski specifically said, we'll evaluate it after the season. I think that's the same with Rob Thompson. We'll evaluate it after the season. And if they make the playoffs, it's going to be awfully hard to not bring him back. So, so I think that probably waits until after the season, and they figure out, like, they let the dust settle, and where did they go? Did they make the playoffs? Did they fade again down the stretch? And they'll make the call that way. But yeah, I think it would probably be a popular decision, at least right now, to bring him back.
I really like him,
Yeah, I think the players respond to him, and He's been here a while, and it's good to see someone who's been a coach his whole career, literally, except for 1 year in the minor leagues, get this chance and do well with it. So I think they'll have to see, but certainly he's putting himself in the conversation. There's no doubt.
Definitely. Yeah.
Brian Sherman wants to know which prospects would the Phillies be willing to give up to improve their chances of making the playoffs this year. So we've touched a lot on Logan O'Hoppe. But I guess we can run them down. Like, Nick Gable, Andrew Painter, I don't see them moving. Yeah. I mean, I just think that they have too much value on those guys. How about like Yohan Rojas or I don't know. I mean, the fact that we're talking about, 4 or 5 guys tells you that, the farm system is still a little bit shallow, right? That, they don't have like this treasure trove of prospects. Is there someone who you think maybe they do move or
maybe Ben Brown. Ben Brown has had a great year.
Yeah.
He's a little bit older than Abel and Painter. He's 22. You could use him. I mean, they've been using him as a starter, but he has experience as a reliever. I think that his trade value is pretty high right now. So he's someone that I don't think has been mentioned that much, but someone that they could potentially move.
No, and again, maybe they, when you look at the farm system, if you're talking about this whole idea of trading from surplus or trading from where you have the most value, it's definitely a pitching-rich farm system, right? So beyond Abel and Painter, Griff McGarry, Ben Brown, Eric Miller was in the futures game. They've got some names that some teams might like. And if you were talking about a prospect to trade in a deal for a short-term, rental piece, maybe like a Ben Brown or a Eric Miller helps get the job done in a case like that. So I think it depends on how big of a trade you're talking about making. But I think if it's a smaller deal, I could definitely see one of those names going.
Kind of just adding one thing. I think that they actually see McGarry in that echelon of closer to that echelon of Painter and Abel. Because I've heard that a couple of teams have inquired about him and that they're not eager to move him. So I would probably put him in that level of the unmovables, untradables.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. I mean, there's a guy, in answer to Adam's question about getting to the big leagues quickly that could do that. I mean, he was a college pitcher and, depending on the role, I mean, I could certainly see him moving a little bit more quickly than a high school player. And you're right. He's had a great season. Now they'll have to see. He's been hurt with the blister issue. So he missed a few starts and they're trying to be careful with innings in the minor leagues at this point in the season. But no, you're right. I think that that could be something to watch for. Andy Kodamo asks, do you think Rhys Hoskins will be traded for a starting pitcher? Is he enough to land a young quality starter? And he adds, I like Hoskins, but do not think he's worth a long-term break the bank deal. He's too streaky.
I don't think that they're going to move him just because it seems like when he's hot, everything else kind of falls into place with his team. And yes, he's streaky, but when he's hot, he looks like he's as good of a hitter as anyone in the sport. So I'm going to lean towards no.
No, I'm going to agree with you. Certainly during the season, no. Maybe after the season, if it doesn't turn out the way you want and you miss the playoffs again, or and you think that you've got to fix some sort of roster imbalance, or maybe then you think about it going into his last year of arbitration, but not now. And if we were picking the most underappreciated Philly, I think Rhys Hoskins would be in that discussion. I hear from a lot of fans like Andy who say he's too streaky or blah, blah, blah. And he is streaky. That's sort of like the trade-off you get. But when he's in a hot streak, man, he can carry an offense. And if you look at his numbers, and I wish I had them right now in front of me. Well, since he came to the big leagues in 2017, if you put his numbers up, they rank with pretty much all the best hitters in the game in terms of run production and all of those things. So he puts up numbers, he produces for you. And, let's see how the rest of the year plays out too. I mean, maybe Derek Hall, continues to hit and proves that he can handle first base. And then you look at it and you go, well, can we move Hoskins in this last year? and put Derek Hall there. It's too premature to say that now.
Yeah.
But I would be careful about moving Rhys Hoskins because he means an awful lot to everything you do from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah.
Jim Long wonders if the Phillies trade for a center fielder, does Odubel Herrera get designated for assignment? Someone might have to, and if you're replacing him in center field, then what's he here for? So
right. I think he probably would have to, and it's not that salary should have that much of a consideration with these types of things, but they didn't pay him that much.
Right.
I don't remember exactly what they signed him to, but I'm pretty sure it was like less than $1 million.
Yeah.
So,
I have learned over the years to not write him off because he always seems to come back under the most uncertain and unexpected circumstances. But I think that if you're, like I said, if you're trading for a center fielder, it means that it's because he's not doing the job, and
right.
And because you want to upgrade there. So let's move away from questions for a couple of minutes, and let's talk about some storylines that we're looking forward to in the second half. And obviously, the trade deadline is a huge storyline. It's coming up quickly now, and we've touched on that a lot. I guess I'll just throw it open. Like, what are you most looking forward to seeing or following, or what's your biggest storyline of the second half as it's about to start?
I think I'm just really curious to see if the bullpen can keep up this streak of dominance that they've been on recently. If they can replicate that in the second half, and I think that'll be really important to a potential playoff push for the Phillies in the second half. So that's probably what I'm focused on.
I am going to focus on Zach Eflin here, and maybe it ends up being no big deal, right? I mean, since this started last month, they've said it's only a bruise. There's no tendon damage. The tendon that he's had repaired. They've gotten the pictures, and they've said that that they don't think that there's a tendon issue. I don't know. I mean, because like last year they were saying it was no big deal, and it turned into a tendon issue and surgery and done for the year. So without being privy to these medical tests and all of that, until I see him, throw a simulated game and face hitters and throw off the mound without coming in the next day and saying, yeah, it's a little sore, I'm going to be concerned about that situation. And because their pitching depth behind the starting five is what it is, an injury to any of those guys, like obviously an injury to Wheeler or Nola, and like it's DEFCON 5, right?
Yeah, it's very thin.
Yeah, but like even if it's Eflin or Gibson or Suarez, and they're going to miss a bulk of time, and it's been a month now. It's been over a month. It's been about a month since Eflin went on the IL, and it's been over a month since he initially hurt the knee. That's worrisome, and so it ties into the trade deadline because I think it impacts what they do. But every single time Zach Eflin picks up the ball, whether it's to play catch or to throw off a mound, I'm going to be interested to see what the outcome of that is, because they need him, and if they don't have him, they need to replace him.
Right. And then it puts pressure on everyone else. It puts pressure on Ranger Suarez to pitch. His last outing, he looked great, but to continue that, like carry that over into the second half, and puts pressure on the bullpen, because so far in Eflin's absence, they've been, the guys that they would throw into that spot are Bailey Falter and Chris Sanchez, and those aren't guys that can eat up a lot of innings. So then that, the bullpen has to make up for those innings that they're not eating up. So it definitely has a lot of ripple effects.
Yes.
Big one.
Yeah, and I would say it puts pressure on Falter and Sanchez right away, because one of them is going to have to take his spot. He's going to pitch probably, we only know their first two starters out of the break, right? Gibson and Wheeler. We don't know who's going to pitch Sunday yet. We'll find out tomorrow, and then we'll find out what they're going to do for the Braves series when they come into town. But, one of those three games past Saturday, either Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, is going to have to be probably Falter or Sanchez. So, and then what happens then, and then probably be one more turn before that, and then the deadline. So I think ultimately the pressure is on those guys, but it's also on Dave Dombrowski, because you've got to come up with an answer if you don't know, and you've got to do it soon. You might not have an answer on Zach Eflin by August 2nd. So you might have to make a move thinking that you're not going to have it.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's Montas, Castillo, and then it kind of drops off after those guys. And
I think
it intrigues me is Paul Blackburn, but his career has been his career numbers are so all over the place that I think it's probably hard to know what you're getting from a guy like that.
Right.
So I think it would involve a degree of risk, but he would definitely cost less than a Montas.
Yeah, I wonder about a Noah Syndergaard if the Angels sell, which they should. I wonder about like Martin Perez in Texas, although it sounds like he wants to stay there and sign an extension. He was at the All-Star game talking about how much he wanted to stay in Texas, where he's been before and has had success before. There's, Arizona's interesting. I don't think they'll move Zach Gallen, but I do think they would love to move Madison Bumgarner if someone would take some of that money.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all of it, but maybe some of it. Maybe if you take a good chunk of it, you don't have to give up as much. I think they would probably trade Zach Davies, although I think he's hurt right now. Merrill Kelly is interesting. He's under control for more than just the rest of this year. So there are names. I don't know how many of them will move, and I do think that if you're holding a pitcher who some contenders are going to be interested in, you have it's probably good for you. I mean, you're at the advantage because I think it's a seller's market,
right?
And I think that that situation, is going to play itself out. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
What else are you looking forward to following? I mentioned in the story that we have up on Inquirer.com right now that Bryce Harper. I mean, how are we 40 minutes into this and we've barely mentioned Bryce Harper? He's going to be coming back from this broken thumb. He might have the pins removed by the end of next week. I think that's sort of the target, and we'll see. What's he gonna? Is he gonna come back? And if he does, what's it gonna look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's anyone's guess, but I think any version of him, regardless of how productive he is, I think will be helpful to this team, which is ironically struggled with offense in the first half. So between him and Segura, I think that it'll be a big asset for the Phillies to have both of those guys back. So, we'll see.
Yes.
And I don't think that Segura is going to take a lot of time. If he goes on a rehab assignment, I mean, he's going to need to go on a rehab assignment because he hasn't seen live pitching, but I don't get the sense that he's going to need to see that or like have a ton of at-bats in the minor leagues. So my guess is that we would get him back sooner rather than later.
You saw him last weekend in Miami, right? It sounds like he's like just chomping at the bit to get back.
Yeah, he is. He was taking swings with in the cage with Kevin Long, and they were like yelling at each other like August 3rd, which is when he gets taken off the 60-day IL. So I think that pretty much says it all. But beyond that, he's on the field doing workouts. He seems very eager to get back out there.
Yeah, which is why, again, we can look at that center field thing and think like, oh boy, they really need to upgrade there.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, get through a few more weeks, get Segura back. It's going to help the offense. Get through a few more weeks after that. Maybe Harper comes back. That's certainly going to help the offense. So I think it's got to be pitching at the trade deadline. And we'll see what Dave Dombrowski does. I think the next 10 days are going to be super interesting. I wonder if it's going to be an active deadline. I don't think it could possibly top last year's deadline, which was just insane.
Yeah.
But it does not seem like that's going to be the case, but we'll see. Obviously, if Juan Soto gets moved, that will kind of shake the earth a little bit, and that'll be a big deal, huge deal. I don't see the Phillies in that mix, but we'll see. Is there anything else? What haven't we covered?
I think the other lingering storyline in the second half will be Castellanos and whether or not he can. I don't think it can get much worse. So I think that it's whether or not he stays stagnant or, shows a little bit more power. So that's the other thing that I'll be keeping my eye on.
Yeah, you do not want to be on my least valuable player list for an entire season, right? Right? Like 80 games, 90 games is enough. You want to get off that list after about 90 games or so.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens. Maybe he can go from being a singles hitter to a doubles hitter. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe a few of those doubles can go over the wall too.
Yeah.
Well, it all starts again tomorrow night when the All-Star break ends and the Phillies come back to Citizens Bank Park for a 3-game series against the Chicago Cubs. Alex, you'll be there. We'll be watching all these games down the stretch. We'll be monitoring the trade deadline. So keep it locked to Inquirer.com for all your Phillies news. Thank you to everyone for joining us for Inquirer Live at Game Day Central, sponsored by Xfinity. Thank you, Alex, for joining me here today. And to everyone, please head over to Inquirer.com/Game Day Central for the latest updates on the Phillies. Game Day Central is the destination for fans and reporters to connect on everything game-related before and during the game. So for Alex, I'm Scott Lauber. Hope to see you again here soon on the next Inquirer Live, and have a great night.